And we're on.
All right, good afternoon. Welcome to the House Environment and Energy Committee. This afternoon, we are going to be looking at a proposal of amendment to H 687 from our own Representative Baumgartz. So, I currently have our legislative counsel with us, so we're going to walk through it ourselves. Walk us through it. Tell us your purpose and what you're
I can
thinking.
do the purpose. Ellen called me in the cafeteria last night and said, I want to try doing it this way. So this is this way that she did. So we talked about it a little bit yesterday, but by the way, just to go through the entire thing quickly. The first part, there's three elements. One is to pick up a piece of, or reconstituted piece of H 128 and do something that the Ag Committee is looking for. So we'll come back to that, just so you know what's coming. Then you go to the third page, and it moves the start date of the road rule from this July, which I think we just never really looked at the date carefully, as we that one somehow we just hadn't really looked at carefully. And it moves the start of the date for the road rule from July 1, 24 to July 1, 26. This has the benefit of giving the board time to promulgate rules for the road rule before it goes into effect. So on the one hand, we always say it's that the board may promulgate rules for the road rules. My guess is that they're going to want to, and this gives them time to do it. It also coincides with the beginning of 1Bs and the board reviewing maps. Then the third of the three elements of this bill is to change the date of the start of the application process for Tier 1A from January 27 to January 26. And we heard, so the board has to have the guidance done for Tier 1A by December 31st of 25. And so the guidance will be in place, and then the maps will start coming in at that point. And the Tier 1A, you can't make a Tier 1A application until the map is in and approved. So the reality is, even though we say January 126, it'll likely be a few months later before the board can start looking at them, but there's no reason they can't start putting in applications. But I think this raises a couple of things that relate to the timeline that we need to think a little bit carefully. So the first one, I think, is easy. The road rule, I think, works just going to July 1, 26. However, if I look at the timeline correctly, it says that the board actually doesn't start reviewing maps until July 1, 26. I'm not sure we intended that. Because we had a lot of testimony from, so that would mean that would actually make, they had the guidance ready by December 31 of 25. I don't know why we're making them wait until July 1, 26 to review maps. What we know is that the maps must be done by July 1, 26, but I'm not sure we actually intended to say that they can't look at maps prior to that. I will also say that I went through the bill today while we were on the floor, trying to find a place where we said they couldn't. It shows up on the timeline saying that they start reviewing maps on July 1, 26. I'm not sure that that's actually in the bill, but I could be wrong. That's what we argued before we make the final decision here. So go ahead.
Representative Logan.
So we're gonna have them start reviewing maps before regional plans are adopted.
That's what I'm talking about. I think there's an issue.
Yeah, the regional plans aren't supposed to be adopted until December 26.
So they can start submitting regional plans.
So
that actually works if that's true.
Well, it says adopt them. I mean, I think. Yeah, they would,
That's when they're
that's the
supposed to be
deadline, but they
approved.
could have done it before that.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's why when I met with Ellen and was trying to figure out how to move forward, the tier one, the ability to apply for tier 1A. We went from the fact that the guidance will be ready by December 31st of 2025.
January 126.
January 126, okay.
Since it's on the
Okay,
calendar.
okay. January 126. So there's theoretically then no reason the town couldn't put in a 2-1A application
Before that.
or simultaneously with it.
And well, presumably they're gonna have, yeah. I mean, the guidance, they'd have to meet the guidance.
Yes. And also,
So 6 months later, they could submit.
that's the way it is now.
Yeah.
I guess there was some want to have them be able to apply for tier 1A a little bit earlier. The other reality is that the regions said that they could be, that they might start submitting maps as early as 18 months from July, which would be January of 26 as well.
mhm.
And you can't apply for a 1A until the map has been approved.
I suppose you could conceivably do it at the same
Yeah,
time. January 1.
doing something. So
And you're saying you couldn't find this date?
yeah, I don't think we
Which-
meant to say that the board can't start
Sooner.
sooner for maps. And therefore 1As. I
Yeah,
don't
I
think we
couldn't find
intended,
that date
Yeah.
either.
I don't think we intended that.
This date.
Yeah, I couldn't find
Yeah.
the July one.
Yeah, I couldn't
2026
find it.
date.
I looked for it all morning.
Yeah,
So that's when the maps must be, that's when the new commissions must have completed their work by July 1 of 26. They all have to have new plans, which would include the new maps done by then. But it doesn't mean, I don't think, we never intended the board can't start reviewing maps sooner than that.
Where does it say the plans will be done by then?
the regional plans need to be approved by December 31st, 2026. That's
Oh,
Title 39.
That's there, okay. So they've got the same, they have to adopt themselves, their plans by then.
After approval by the ERB.
So it might have made sense that we're silent on this anyway, on the ERB review of regional plans.
Yeah, ERB approval would be before their adoption.
No, the regions adopt their plans.
And then the ERB
Yeah. that the ERB
reviews and approves.
Yeah, so they have to have their step done by December 31st of 26.
Mhm.
So they submit them on January 1st.
Right.
They have up to 30 days, I think, to submit them after they're done, so.
Yes.
But I guess my point is that the timeline suggests that for some reason the board can't start
It's-
approving them until
Yeah, but
July.
that's not in the
That's,
bill.
I agree with you.
Yeah, that's not
That's
in
why
the
I
bill.
couldn't find it,
That's
so.
just a generic
Okay.
projection.
So are you making a proposal?
Well, first first let's pull it, I wanted to just make sure that was, it was in the timeline and it was confusing. So yes, my proposal would be that maps can be submitted as early as January 1 of 26.
Tier 1A applications.
Tier 1A, I'm sorry, Tier 1A applications.
Can be submitted as early as January 26th
Yeah,
instead of 27.
yes. To make it a year.
Oh, I see, yeah.
Not make them wait so long, not for.
So,
They don't have to.
but the
But then
regional,
the
they
guide-
are dependent on the regional planning commission mapping.
Yes,
But then the guidance for the 1A application process will be, okay, I
yeah,
see.
will be done by then.
Right.
We'll have the whole data. Now, as a practical matter, so as a practical matter, that they can't do it until the maps have been approved. You can't apply for 1A until the maps have been approved. The chair suggests, and I think likely they could theoretically be submitted together. So number one, I didn't see any reason for them to have to wait that full year to apply to be a tier 1A. And now we're making sure that the board can start approving maps as soon as that, as soon as the maps come in, January 1 of 26, rather than timeline for some reason said, board starts approving maps.
So is your amendment what you wanted to say?
Yes, yes. This is what confused everybody. This is what confused me. Okay,
Yes.
this piece on the timeline that says
That-
begins review of regional plans and
That-
maps.
That's
That
just,
doesn't make any sense. and it's
Okay,
not-
get it.
Yeah, okay.
But I'm saying like what,
Yes, the map, the amendment's right.
okay. Is everyone following?
Not really. If you could repeat it again, or maybe even someone else. Kate, do you want to repeat it? Read it again. Sorry, Seth.
sure. And then we can repeat it again with a visual aid, is whenever Will's ready.
It's something to look at. It's not pretty, and there's probably a couple mistakes, but I can post it now if people want that visual aid.
Yeah, for
And that's just,
first
I'll
draft.
replace it with a better one later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want me to do it verbally or just wait until we can all look at something?
Yeah, can you just email it to us too?
Yeah.
Does it make it a PDF?
Yeah.
Of course, it has the old dates on it.
It's the road rule back 2 years and tier 1A application up to them.
You haven't sent it yet, Will?
Have
Email?
it by email, and I'll post it next.
It's going up to the stars.
Bouncing around out in the gravity-free zone.
Here it is.
This actually does not include the amendment timeline yet. Look at the fancy. So I divided all the dates into 5 different sections. So we have NRB, ERB reform, the DHCD designation process, the future land use maps and regional planning process, NRB and ERB rulemaking, and then the location-based jurisdiction processes. So what Representative Bongartz is talking about right now is down in 5. You'll see there's no section there for that July 1st. ERB begins review of regional plans and future land maps. That's the imaginary date that is not in the bill.
Should check with Ellen where she got that.
I think it was from our conversation
Yeah.
in committee. And then, where did the road rule go, Will?
That iteration. It's at the top of section 3.
Oh, okay, future land use maps and regional mapping. Right now,
Oh.
the road rule goes into effect July 1, 2024. So Representative Baumgart's amendment is to move that to July 2026, which would line it up with it would be after the reports are accepted, after the Tier 1A application guidance has been issued, and after the ERB report on recommendations for jurisdiction in Tier 2. And at the same time, this imaginary date when the ERB begins review of regional plans and future land use maps.
Also give the new board a year to develop rules.
Beginning July 1, 2026,
No, they get appointed on July 1.
2025.
So they'll have a year to develop
Okay,
that rationale.
Okay, so if you're looking at the amendment on page 3, the proposal is to move that implementation date for the road rule,
Which is section 24.
section 24, from the first change in the future land use maps and regional mapping to the last change.
In your amendment, are all these dates changing or are you just having to strike it all on that?
Oh, so it's road rule change, 1A application, start date change, and then it's same, everything else is the same. It just adds 2 lines to the effective dates. Subsection 3 is the road rule. And section 46 is the repeal of chapter 24 BSA, chapter 76A.
Members have questions about the dates for Representative Baumgart's. All right, do you want to talk us through the other part of your amendment?
So the first part. Probably talked about yesterday. And the Ag Committee sent us H-128. We haven't had time to review. Really think through.
That's not me, is it actually?
Who?
Who's beeping? Okay, well, anyway, can you guys hold off on that for a minute? 'Cause we're gonna just listen to the rest of them and.
So, realized this committee, we didn't have time to look carefully at everything from the Ag Committee. And I think the biggest issue for us with what came over for the Ag Committee, kind of in almost every instance, was a big issue was there was no way to have any understanding of what the scale might turn out to be. That when the presenter came in, he talked to, I think I don't know what their intent is, but he said, well, our intent was this, but the intent doesn't necessarily account for what might happen. So at least my feel looking at much of what the ag committee sent over to us, is that there was nothing to deal with scale, and in large scale commercial operation going forward without a permit could have pretty serious implications for neighbors. So however, I have, so I'll say we all want to help farms be successful if we can. I looked at the section having to deal with, and I say I credit to Tim Taylor, who came up with who emailed the concept. I was trying to figure out that one of the things they want to do is have the ability to aggregate product from other farms, and rather than have to have each farm have a manned farm stand, be able to aggregate them. And there's a certain logic to that. And the current rule says that if you have a farm stand or farms operate sales of product on your farm, you have to sell at least 50% of your own product, then you can sell 50% of somebody else's. What this amendment would do is say that if you're in a building, if you build a building or in a building of less than 1,000 square feet of retail space, you can aggregate product from other farms that meet the RAP standards, the required agricultural practices. So Vermont farms, basically. And you can sell more than 50% of, that's 50%, more than 50% that may not be your own product. And so one of the fears of the way that the 128 came over, we didn't have time to go explore, it's just a fear on my part, is it doesn't take much to qualify as being a farm. $2,000 in sales even. So we've seen we have at least the opportunity is there to have a little fake farm and then have a major commercial operation on your fake farm. And that's something that we would need to really, really understand before we started to really do this on a larger scale. But it does seem to me that in a space that is up to 1,000 square feet and has to sell agricultural products from Vermont, nobody's going to bother having a fake farm in order to do 1,000 square feet of that kind of retail sales, because it just doesn't make any sense. So it feels to me like we could get away with allowing a building of up to 1,000 square feet of retail sales with a wrap product. And by the way, it does include the ability to sell your own logo T-shirts and coffee cups or whatever else for the farm. But that seems safe to me. It helps the ag committee a little bit toward their goals. If they had, like I said yesterday in response to one question, if they had 6 stores they wanted to open, this opens one of them on a scale that at least to me feels like I'm okay with it. So
Representative Pat.
I mean, I agree with this. I mean, I think there needs to be flexibility. As you were speaking, it was occurring to me that the farm where this is located, depending on what their own product is that produce, that could very well be fluctuating a great deal seasonally. So there's a space, and they could sell other stuff if they're selling, produce. That's gonna come and go with the season, and they might as well use the space that they have to sell some other local food from another farm.
Representative Stebbins.
So I'm sure, I'm sorry, I was reading the language while you were talking, which is never helpful. Did you present this to members in House Ag?
Yeah.
And how do they feel about the 1,000 feet? I'm thinking through all of the little farm stalls, and some of them are not so little. And now I'm like in a spreadsheet going 30 times, to try and figure out because there's always, you pick a number and you've picked a number. Did they have any feedback about that number?
I think it's fair to say everybody went, that works so great.
All right.
Representative Tory.
They'd like more, but other doors, but
I'm just curious, is this the same section that had the baked goods in it?
Yeah, we didn't do that. I didn't look at it. We can talk about it, but
Can there be baked goods?
Why? What a good segue to our legislative council.
yeah,
Ellen, tell us what you've done here. You've changed the structure of it and maybe just help us understand that and then orient us to what we're enabling here, please.
Sure, Ellen Tchaikovsky, Office of Legislative Counsel. So, in the first instance of amendment, this is amending Act 250, and it's amending the definition of development and what is not included in development. So it is an exemption from Act 250, and it is structured similar to how we treat compost under Act 250. So compost generated by a farm is not development. And there are some qualifications on that, the amount produced, and has to come from products from the farm, inputs grown on the farm. So so that's sort of why I located in this section so that it's similar to how compost would be treated.
Since you brought up compost, does the compost does it all have to come from a farm regulated by the RAPS?
No, so there's a different definition of farm for compost. And so that is why this definition has its own definition of farm. To be specific that the word farm you're using here is one regulated by the RAPS. Yeah. So this, I'll just say, accessory on farm business is a complicated statute in Title 24. And so neatly bringing it over to Act 250 has been a little bit of a challenge, but that's why this is a little bit long. But really the first sentence is sort of the operative language, which is development does not include the construction and operation of a retail space of up to 1,000 square feet on a farm for the sale of agricultural products grown on a farm and products that name, describe, or promote the farm or farm retail operation, including merchandise or apparel that features the farm or farm retail operation. And so it doesn't use the word accessory on farm business because accessory on farm business is in Title 24 and it's broader than just selling farm products. And then it defines farm, and this is the definition of farm from the Title 24 section on accessory on farm businesses. So it's parcel or parcels owned or leased or managed by a person devoted primarily to farming and subject to the RAPS. And then for leased lands, the lessee must exercise control over the lands to the extent they would be considered part of the lessee's own farm. And indicators of such control would include whether they make day-to-day decisions concerning cultivation or other farming related to the leased lands and whether the lessee manages the land for farming during the lease period. So that's the language that's currently used for accessory on farm business in Title 24. But the first sentence is a narrower definition than what is in accessory on farm business. So yes, it doesn't mention baked goods. It is just agricultural products grown, actually probably should be grown or raised on a farm.
Devin.
Thank you. So for Victoria's comment, grown on a farm would include baked goods.
No. So there's some vagueness because you grow wheat, you grow sugar, you do not grow bread. That is, I think, falls under the processing of agricultural products. So that's a value added product.
Yeah.
So that is a question. Because that is one of the distinctions with what is currently defined as farming. because farming does currently allow for the storage and sale of products grown or raised on the farm, not processing. So that is one of the key distinctions between a farm and an accessory on-farm business, is the processing value-added things. So if you want to include that, you would need to affirmatively change the language.
Representative Pat.
I mean, that, I think, you know, I don't think we can specify, get too narrowly specific here about exactly what processing is. I would just include processing, because I think, you know, it's, at least I would think, I'm trying to imagine the store, and is it, are we, if we're prohibiting them from baking bread or a pie, or maybe making a casserole with something that they grow on their farm, I don't think that's our intent. So
Well, I think that is a question.
I mean, I'm not saying this should be a restaurant, but if there's some stuff on a shelf that's, you know, that's processed from the farm or from other local farms, then at least in intent, I would want them to be able to do that.
The reason I did it the way that I did it is that if you start to talk about processing, what we think of as simple quickly can become more complicated. And it can be the scale. There's no way to determine scale, and that's, so we didn't have a lot of time. I kept it to retail sales, so that it's crisp and clean, 1,000 square feet measurable, farm product measurable. And I didn't do it because I'm opposed to what you're talking about, but I did it because I know that we will end up down a rabbit hole.
Well, and we've put it in the report back to look at this issue because it becomes complicated quickly.
Yeah, I guess.
And I think I hear you. I do hear you. And I would say that the thing that we do hear from farmers is they want to just be able to sell farm products from neighboring farms. And right now, I think they may be doing that, but they don't necessarily all feel good about how they're relating to the statute. And so we're trying to say, yeah, if you're selling a Vermont farm product, you're not breaking the law. And we're going to look at the other more complicated pieces of this as we make larger changes to the statute.
I understand. I mean, we would need to get a whole, we'd need to write another 3 pages of statute. But I think it was,
And take a lot more testimony
yes,
from folks affected by this.
got it. Okay. I withdraw my comment.
Representative.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate that and this dialogue that's going on right now. But and this may be already excluded, somebody can help me out. What about cider and cheese?
They're farm products.
They are farm
From
products.
Vermont farms, yeah. Or from wrapped farms.
So when we're talking about products on the farm or as within this conversation, I was running that through my mind and want to understand if that's acceptable under this or not.
I don't know what cheese is. Because that's a value-added process. Yeah, because it comes from milk.
I mean, up to this, you could make the same argument for cider. So that, I mean, that's where, I mean, you're boiling sap, that's processing. So, and I do, it seems to just, my gut feeling is cheese and cider is,
Maple
that's
syrup, yeah.
Vermont farms, and that's what.
It's what people want when they go to our farms.
What do you mean you don't have cider?
So I have a question for you, Ellen. When you're driving down the road and we see the sign maple syrup sold here. It's very seasonal. It's could be someone's backyard. They're selling from their woodlot or a neighbor's woodlot. Has there ever been an issue with that? Or how, how do we look at seasonal retail?
Oh, seasonal?
Well, I mean, I guess isn't that what you would call that? I mean, most people, that just happens.
So a lot of farm stands are already exempt from Act 250. And so like maple syrup is defined as a farm product.
Okay.
And it is a little unusual because both maple sap and syrup is defined under farming. And so already under Act 250, the definition of farming, which means something is exempt, includes sale of at least 50% of something from their own farm. Right? So whatever they are selling there has to be at least 50% of it by sales has to come from their farm, and they're exempt. So the crux of the issue is when they are unable to or don't want to be stocking or keeping track of how much is coming from their farm versus other farms.
Does this address that 50%?
This just says basically any farm. So yeah, so it doesn't have that threshold. So it could be a farm. The retail supply of that store, that stand, could be entirely from other farms.
But if it's cheese they make on their own farm?
I don't think so. That sounds like processed agricultural product to me.
And then, so they would need a permit.
Yes, although I do think
Yeah.
we- I think that this language would benefit from a definition of agricultural product. I was just looking because I think there is one. I'm just having a hard time finding it at the moment. But I think that it is literally things grown or raised. As opposed to things you then add value to. So jam, that's processed.
Syrup's not considered a value-added product.
Yeah, syrup is a weird one. So this is one of the reasons why I said this is complicated. In addition to the structure of the statute, this is, there's a lot of dimensions to this concept.
That's why we wanted to be resolved at more of a policy level with the new professional board.
If we did, just to pull this apart for a second, we did say that it could be processed on a Vermont farm. That doesn't necessarily open, or does that or does it not? Because what we're talking about is retail sales. What if we said you could sell, how much could sell product processed on a wrap farm?
Right, so I think it would be important to be very specific on what each of those steps, because it does depend on what your intent is. And historically, the intent of this, not this law, but the other law, is to prevent just stores. Like at a certain point, you just become a grocery store. Aggregating products from around the state and selling it on a farm, is that a farm stand? Is that a store? So if what you're asking for is retail sale of agricultural products and agricultural products that have been processed on other farms, perhaps. But then is it processed on another farm or processed within Vermont? And then you get into constitutional issues.
That's what that's up because this was an attempt to do something.
Just get your permit. Representative Pat.
I mean, getting back to what Representative Bongartz was saying earlier, before you came in setting a if you set a percent of the product that needs to be from that farm as opposed to from other farms, you're kind of moving in that direction. I mean, in order to really define this the way we're, you could end up with pages and pages that I don't think anybody wants. But, to me, just my gut feeling, if it's an apple orchard and they want to make applesauce, that makes sense. That makes sense to me. Or cider.
But to Ellen's point, most of those larger operations are stores. Farm stand. A couple in my area. Pretty large.
So it may be that an attempt to do something. Everything, even what I thought might be simple isn't.
Well, I mean, to clarify what you've proposed does open one of the doors for your language, whether or not it gets to all of the nuance. I guess I'll just go back to, that's why we have that report. I mean, I would prefer to do something than nothing in the interim.
I think this gets to the farm stand issue that you were trying to deal with, like if someone's selling and it's by weight right now, or by
It's percentage of sales.
by the dollars.
Yeah.
And so if you're selling something that apparently maple syrup's allowed to be sold as a farm product, so syrup's going to be really expensive compared to your vegetables that you grow, but you want to sell both. That would let someone do that. This would let someone do that. This language.
Yes, the syrup is not from your farm. Yeah.
That was the intention, is if you're having this be, your neighbor has a bumper crop of some really great vegetable that's really valuable compared to your carrots, you could sell both and have it be a Vermont farm stand. That's what we're doing, correct?
And if you sell vegetables and your neighbor has beef, you can bring some of that. You can sell beef.
Representative Logan.
Thanks. So for this first page, in the word development, we're not using the term accessory on-farm business. Intentionally.
Yeah, we're putting that into a later.
Okay. So we don't want to say the construction and operation of an on-farm
Accessory on farm business.
retail business.
Well, if you could use that, but you would have to caveat and narrow it, because accessory on farm business includes a lot of different types of businesses.
Okay. So these are not totally related, these two separate sections.
Well, they're partially related because the second section is also amending the 50% threshold. So the Act 250 section is not using a 50% threshold, and neither is the other one. And it is also the t-shirt sales too.
They can both be parallel.
Yeah.
One is Title 24 and one's Title 10.
Right. But basically, we're authorizing something in Title 10 that we wouldn't want to exclude because of the way that on-farm, like accessory on-farm business is defined in 20.
Yeah. So there are other dimensions to that definition.
Right. Okay, I get it.
So I guess the only
Good
thing,
enough.
yeah, but I think the amendment doesn't do a whole lot we'd like to do, but it does a little bit. A step in the direction for people. And I think we need to look at, if we're all sitting around this table next year, then time to think about it more, but this, I'm comfortable with this.
Any further thoughts on this? Representative Logan?
Thank you. It just seems like a pretty drastic change to accessory on-farm business. To change the entire definition of accessory on-farm business to be a business where the products don't have to be from that farm. I mean, that's a
Doesn't-
pretty major change.
They're vegetables and meat and things that farmers in Vermont produce on their farms. They're not everything under the sun.
Qualifying products are.
Yeah. But accessory on farm business does include the word preparation and processing. So yeah, I mean, I do think. Yes, I think it is it is a pretty big change.
It's a pretty big change because you could imagine an accessory on-farm business could mean you're selling 100%. The product is like jam that was made in France,
Not in France.
not in France.
It has to be on a farm regulated by the RAPS. So that is a Vermont farm. It has to come from Vermont, but it could be that there is a business on a farm now. Let's see, do I want to say Carmel? Where none of the inputs come from that Vermont farm?
Presumably we went through a permit for that,
Not under this language.
Oh, okay.
but historically.
That's not what we're trying to,
Well, that's what the Ag Committee was trying to do it to some extent.
I know that they were, we just want to do the 1,000 square feet of retail sales.
Okay, but this is the second instance of amendment. For municipal.
But so if this is allowed under municipal, but not under Act 250, they still need an Act 250 permit for processing?
Yeah.
But not a municipal.
They might need site plan, but the municipality can't prohibit them.
Should look, let's think about this one over the weekend.
So
Because I want to make sure I really, because I'm not sure I had my
Yes.
answer on that part of what.
That's why it's constantly Representative Clifford.
No, that's just, my question was, aren't these things, so these things aren't exempt now? From like Act 250?
Correct.
They are not.
The only thing that's exempt from Act 250 is the physically growing and raising, and then the sale of those products that have been grown or raised, as long as it's 50%. The processing is currently not exempt from Act 250.
Thank you.
The dates change.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
just a question here on the accessory on farm. We had a report, activity jurisdiction over agricultural businesses report. It talked about accessory on farm business. Is that those definitions that Workman hold in here?
I don't have that in front of me.
Okay,
Looks
that
like you
came
do.
in.
Yes, it's from last year.
January 15th.
From France.
Yep.
China.
Talks about a number of these different definitions. So. Well, we should maybe look at this before we. So are you familiar with this report?
I have not read it in a while, in a few weeks.
We had it brought in earlier this session, but yeah, it's not fresh on our minds. So Representative Bongartz, you're gonna make a proposal here?
Well, I'll make a proposal that I'll move that we adopt what are labeled the third and fourth amendments in the amendment. That changing the date for the start of the road move from July 1/24 to July 1/26. And the date on which tier 1 applications can be submitted to the board from January 27 to January 26.
Okay, so right now it's your amendment, we voted the bill out. And so I think where we would be is if you want to submit your amendment as the dates, and then we vote on it Tuesday morning.
Okay.
Representative Logan.
We don't want to do the 5th,
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Yes. Yes, we have to do the rest.
4th, and 5th.
The parts that change though. Yes, thank you.
Representative Pat.
So I mean, I'm just trying to jog my memory. What does happen? Is there existing language regarding the farm store in the bill no? So
Not in our bill.
not in
It's
our
in
bill.
the H.
Okay.
Okay, so just to reiterate, what's happening is, I think Representative Bongartz is gonna just propose an amendment with effective dates in it. Which, Ellen, remind me, can we vote on it now as a committee? And then it would be would be a committee amendment, or?
So you have options, because potentially, probably it would be draft 2.1. And so you could straw poll on it unless Representative Baumgartz is thinking about making any other change. If you're gonna make any other changes, you may just want to wait to have the vote. But if anyone wants to be added, that I can do that. But you will need to do a straw poll at some point because it would go to the floor.
And
And you can straw poll and vote for it and not have your name added to it if you don't want.
right. So we can straw poll now, and you'll submit just the date changes. So we're gonna vote on 2.0 which is the 3rd, 4th, and 5th instances of amendment,
Which is just the dates.
just the dates. Everyone good with this plan? Okay, where Larry went.
That's-
Yeah, just for clarification, while Larry's gone, and we got maybe a little time, I know we can vote when he comes back. You also have the first and second instance of amendment. Did we have heartburn over the first? Which is the 1,000 square feet?
I was going to ask Ellen that question.
Well, I think you sort of paused on whether or not you want it to be just grown or raised, vegetables, fruit, mushrooms, poultry, or if you want it to be sale of value-added processed products. So I was sort of scribbling some potential amendments to that, changes to that in the margin. So I don't know where you landed on that.
And Madam Chair, my question, when I was asking cheese or brought up cider, I was just trying to gain information. I wasn't saying I was proposing to do that. That complicates it. I'm certainly not willing to go there. But it was just a conversation that we were having as to would they qualify under we are trying to accomplish or not. But when I'm reading page 128, of the qualified products, it is pretty descriptive.
Okay, the thinking here is to stick to the parts we are clear on right now, which are the date changes.
Sure.
And then we'll, watch the calendar, be ready for amendments on Tuesday.
And I may try to take a little more work on this and see if we can keep it at a simple enough. I'll do a couple of minutes with that one. But for now, let's do the dates.
Representative Simmons.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Yeah, if you have capacity for that, Seth, looking at H 128. I would still like to try and do something. I know they can go through the permit process. I know I get that, but it's, to go through the permit process because you want to, I don't. Yeah.
I'll spend a couple.
We don't have to do, we could do the first instance of amendment.
Yeah.
The way it is.
Yeah, we could.
And just delete the second. Right?
Can I maybe propose some typos to it, like fixing a couple of small things, like for example, or do you want to do it right now? Because like rereading it, I think what I would maybe do is have it say at least agricultural products grown or raised on a farm, and then also. So there is another definition of farm in Act 250, and I do think I could just, I wrote this pretty quickly, to be honest. So I think I could actually maybe tweak that definition just slightly and then just cross-reference that definition to save up that space. And then also I was gonna check, I think the definition of agricultural product is in the rule, and so I don't know if you want to put it in the statute. Anyways, those are just some thoughts we had just now while we were talking. But so, yes, if you want to approve this, I can't stop you. So, sure. But if you, it sounded for a minute there like I might have more time to rewrite this.
It sounded like you might, now I'm hearing you say that it would be helpful to have more time, and we're going to stick to the plan of the dates. So the instance of amendment that Representative Bongartz is going to be proposing will be just the date changes for now. Right. Is there further discussion? We're going to take a straw poll.
Okay.
All those in favor of the amendment to change the dates, which are the sections we have been referring to, but third, fourth, fifth instances of amendment in this version. All those in favor of the date changes, raise your hand. All right, that's 10 of us. And 0-1 is absent.
You voted.
Yeah. Everybody's hand.
One absent.
Representative Smith is not with us. Okay, so with that, I think we're finished with our business for the day.
Spend a couple minutes with just a couple minutes before I go.
Okay. All right, we're adjourned for the week.